Hey guys, how are you? 1, 2 testing. So I just want to make sure that I'm getting some sound here. And I think the sound is coming out. So we're gonna talk about the Zimura Endgame. The Zimura Endgame. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think I'm coming out. I think I'm coming out well. So is that loud or is that okay? I think it's fine. All right. So let's get into this thing. We're gonna get into this thing. I want to play an audio from Philip Chipfumbu. Like I said in my title, that Philip Chipfumbu and Derek are now fighting. So let's get into that. All right, so yeah, just trying to get everything in order. Okay. If you're just joining my live, I'm wanting to talk about nyaya dzezimura dzanetsa asi dzinofanirwa kungotaurwa. So I'm gonna play an audio. I've got a couple of audios that I need to play here. So I'm gonna play an audio from Chipfumbu, right? I want to play an audio from Chipfumbu. Okay, there we go. It's an audio from Chipfumbu.
Hama dzinodikanwa muri seiko munyuira muno asi tiriko tiri kungofamba zvinhu zviri kufamba zvakanaka zvinhu zvese zviri kuflowa zvakaita sei zvakanaka ndaisa voice note rineri sekugara kwandagara nichingoita mazuva ose.
So this is an audio from Chipfumbu.
Zvinhu mafambiro azvenge zvichiita vanhu zvingati vashamise kuti wai Chipfumbu achitaura zvinhu izvi nhasi of which vanhu havatatombovaona vari vese. Chinhu chinonzi investigation chinogona kutora kana 3 years kana 10 years. Mune vamwe vanhu vari vanosenza mugovernment vanogona kupupura zvandiri kutaura izvo. Chinhu chinonzi investigation hachiitwe ne1 day, chinotora 10 years or even 20 years.
So that's Chipfumbu's talking. He shared that in some WhatsApp group.
Dzimwe propaganda dzinoshandiswa kuti Chipfumbu aishandana nawo beti achi from 2017 kusvika 2022 wayanga akanyarara. Chinhu chandisingafe ndakaita muupenyu hwangu inini kutaura chinhu chandisina evidence nacho. Zvinhu mukatonzwa ndataura chinhu,
Welcome everyone who's coming onto the live.
ndinenge ndakatohoda evidence yacho. Hazvina basa kuti ndatora 5 years, hazvina basa ndatora 3 years. Musi wandaachievha evidence yechinhu ichocho ndisina zvimwe zvinhu zvandiri kuda pachinhu ichocho ndine expose.
This is Philip Chipfumbu speaking.
Muri kunzwa madzodikana? Ndakaengejwa nevakomana. Ndofunga vanhu vekuHarare South, mamusicians ari kunhingirikini, ari kuHopley vanowirirana neni kuti ndakatomboya kuHopley naGift Amuri ndichimukambenera kuti Gift Amuri muise board, because Gift Amuri aiswera kuno kuzengeza 3 kwandogara achikumbira kuti Chipfumbu ita kuti ndiswewo board. Ende zveshuwa ndakaappreciate because iye akanga achiti ndiri kuda kuti tinopusha this agenda yamuri kupusha. Munozviziva vanhu vekuHarare South kuti ndakauya naye ikoko ndikakukumbirai. Vamwe vanhu vainditrasta kuHarare South vanogona kusatonditrust through movement.
So Chipfumbu is saying that he's the one akaisa Amuli mboard.
Kukumbirawo muvhotere murume uyu nekuti murume uyu ari kuda kupesua agenda yatinayo sekutaura kwake. but before kana vanhu muchinyatsofollowa ndakamboexchange mashoko nagift amuri.
Hey, Chiwaniso, how are you?
Gift amuri before.
Hope you're good.
Ndikatombonyora chimwe chipress statement ndichiti gift amuri ari kutaura iye kuti ari kufonerana naAlbert Nyati mazuva ose. Albert Nyati achimuti uya uite chairman kuzimura ini ndakusiya. Vanhu vari mugroup rakanzi Zimura Disgruntled zvandiri kutaura munozviziva. Ndikamuti iwewe kana uri kufonerana naAlbert Nyati it means ukatopanduka iwewe. Akazondifonera kuinbox akauya kuno kana even mapictures tiri tese kuhopuri ndinawo ndogona kusenda. Ndikafamba naye kuma-musicians ose ari muchitungwiza.
So Chipfumbu is just saying I'm the one who campaigned for
ndakapuwa nema-musicians kubva mune zvatakawirirana navo kuti tiri kuzogadzisa Zimura kusvika yanaka. I understand kuti through investigations dzandakaita ndedzekuti ndakashandisirwa psychology zvekuti Chipfumbu akangonzwa muromo kuti tinoda kupesua this thing anondisapota then ndovhoterwa nevanhu kupinda mubhodhi ndozonopanduka ndaamukati. But don't forget kuti ndambotaura mashoko ekuti munhu uyu aiti ndiri kufonerwa naAlbert Nyati achinditi kana uchida kuita chairman uya uite chairman kuzimura inini ndakusiya. Ndoda kuti mundinzwisise kwandiri kubva nekwandiri kuenda. Now tava kufamba tese taakupusha agenda yekugadzisa Zimura tese sekufunga kwangu kuti tiri kugadzisa Zimura tese. Ndamba ndachitanga kuchishungurudzwa manje kuinbox not papublic. Iwe unofanira kuita so, iwe unofanira kunyarara, isisi ndisi tofanira kutaura pamberi pevanhu, iwe haufanira kutaura, unofanira kunyarara, zvazodai. Hai, ndikati haakana guys, ini ndenjinyararirei. Ndakambenge chiti ndikanyora press release chandofunga kuti ma-musician anofanirwa kunzwa. Ndinoshaudzwa so, akakupa mvumo yekunyora zvinhu izvi ndiani?
So that's Chipfumbu speaking. It's a long audio, but please bear with me.
Kukondinya nekushandisa psychology. Now psychology yakushandiswa ndeyekuti Chipfumbu asvibe kuma-musicians. Kana Chipfumbu asviba kuma-musicians, ma-musicians achanga akutaura nezvedu. Ndamboona imwe ngirikini yakanzi Derek is our frontman. I don't trust Derek at all kubvira musi wokutanga because Derek akauya nagift amuri kwandiri, of which ndichidzokera mundangariro gift amuri akambenga achitaura kuti ndiri kufonerana naAlbert. Inini saFphilip Chipfumbu ndoziva kuti Derek naAlbert itsika nditsikeo, vanotoonana everyday. Saka agenda yatiri kupusha kuzimura ine painosvika pakuaffecta Albert. Derek haana kumbobvira akadeclare relationship yake naAlbert kuma-musicians. Saka izvi ndazvitaurira kuti ndanzwa kuti ndamboona chimwe chimeseji chachichinzi next week tinoda kumacha tichipemberera kubviswa kwaPolisile. Kubviswa kwaPolisile hakupembererwe. Kubviswa kwaPolisile achafanirwa kuchenurwa nemapepa kuti abva zvakanaka here kuzimura. Tisashandise ma-musicians kuti tibenefite zvinhu zvatoda kubenefita. And I repeat this, Derek Mpofu ngadeclare relationship yake na Nyati pamberi pema-musicians.
Talking about
Derek
Nyati and Derek and Albert Nyati, their relationship.
Laziti akataura iye kuti Derek Mpofu na Albert Nyati mari dzakavaendesa kuFrance dzakabva kupi achibvunza Polisile. Polisile asati apindura ndakabvunza polisi lekuti zviri kutaura mukomana uyu ichokwadi here kuti vanhu ava vakamboendeswa kufrance. Polisi akati kufrance vakaenda but havana kuendeswa nemari yezimura. ndobva ndatongozviona ipapo kuti chakurabwa ndichataura laziti but kufrance vakaendeswa nezimura.
Well, I don't know about that. This is Chipfumbu speaking,
kana
guys.
ndichifa ndichafira chokwadi, kana ndichivengwa ndichavengwa chokwadi. Mamusicians, chitorai nzira yamuri kuda imimi kugadzirisa zimura naye. Nezuro ndakaswera ndichikumbira vakomana kuti vakomana, instead yekuti tiite fight pamberi pevanhu,
So they are fighting.
ngatipushei agenda kuti tiende
There's a picture I shared. I will talk
Zimura
more.
ireba
Because
musicians. Nezuro wese ndakaswera ndichitaura nevakomana ivava. But they think takatoita rabofu Philip Chipfumbu mumemory yevanhu, ndisu takaita zvinhu. Seka rwako. All right. Inini, I'm not into power hungry. Zvachose because ndokana nditaura zvinhu izvi because ndakabva mubhodhi ndatoelektwa zvokuti dai ndanga ndiri munhu akanga achida kutodya mari ndaitodyawo mari, because nzira dzaidyiwa nadzo mari ndaidziona through investigation. Saka chainditadzisa kukireta kudyawo mari ndiani? Tarirai urombo hwese
Hey, Ted, yes,
hwandinawo.
how are you? This is Philip Chipfumbu speaking, guys. Just bear with
Handidi
me.
here kupfuma. Saka pari kushandiswa propaganda yekuti Philip akangaina naubeti, saka naubeti vari kudya mari. Vaidya mari vese. Saka ndingaendese vanhu vandinoziva kuti vane evidence yekuti ndaidya navo mari kukota. Zvine mumeka sense here izvozvo. Handei tinosangana ku-EGM. Regai ndipedzise nyaya yangu ndichiti Zimu
Hey,
inonzi Zimu yaye Zimbabwe Union
Zimbabwe Musicians Union.
haina kumiririra vaimbi kwayakauya ichiita pachunhu ichi, because every evening kuma-private group vaibvunza mabenefits avo kuti isisu kana tadai tichazowaneiwo chii. Then mabenefits avo akazobuda pachena. Pane promise yekuti iditi weutonga achano kana polisi takwanisa kubvisa polisi. That's why mamushinzwa utonga achishandisa kuti convicted polisi achiri kuitei kuzimura. Inhawo yekuti kana polisi abva kuzimura iditi weutonga omva apoindwa saexecutive director. Isi tiri kutaura kuti kuzimura hakuna executive director, but iditi ari kuti munofanira kundapoinda executive director, because mukatarisa tsamba dzake dzaari kutonyora idzi ari kutorifeya kuti polisi renyuwe yezimura executive director, but akagara nevanhu vari kutaura kuti polisi renyuwe haasi executive director. Ari kuda kuti that position irambe ichimentenwa so that iye kana apoindwa anoapoindwa saexecutive director.
Oh. Hey.
Ndomakuda information yekuti Zimura ndakamboposta magrupu makazviona ichange ichiafiliata mari kuZimu pagore pega pega, mari yainzi $5 pe musician inoiswa kuZimu
Times 4,000 members, that's 20,000 US.
Irane organization
20,000, yeah. Total of 20,000 US. Sakanzi
right. Ndambokutaurira
Zimu lapho mari ndo zvana gift
achitore gore rimwe chete chotora even 10 years. Achitore zuva rimwe chete chinotora even 5 months. Achitore zuva 5 months chinotora even gore.
Okay.
That information yandakutaura iyi ndiri kurevesa pamusoro payo. Right. Now,
So guys,
yeah, against Zimu.
This is Chipfumbu speaking.
Zimu yakatora nyaya dzangu dzose idzi musocial media. Ndomba yati taakufundisa vahutness zhangazha napolisi remwiwe vadisqualifyiwe kulaw society. Ndomba vaakushandisa umpo hwaPhilip Chipfumbu inini handisi kuzviziva zvinhu izvi. Kwakuzoti vapindurwa nana polisi rimwe kunzi tipei evidence yezvinhu zvamuri kutaura, kwakuchiisa mugrupu. Ndo pandakatanga kuziva kuti ko vanhu ava vari kuti vari kundimiririra. Ndakavatuma here kuti vandimiririre inini? Handisi member yezimu, handina kana interest yekutomboregister kuthat organization. Saka ndakatora danho iroro kunovhura doketi, nekuti vanhu kana vachinge vasingazive kuti zvinhu zvinofamba sei, vanofunga kuti vakachenjera.
Right. Okay. This was Chipfumbu, Philip Chipfumbu. For those who don't know who Philip Chipfumbu is, Philip Chipfumbu, who used to be on the Zimura board, and he was fired, and he has been the one who has been fighting. He's been fighting for. He's the one who's been fighting for. He was fired. He's the one who's been fighting. I just wanted to share this. He's the one who's been fighting Zimura, and I shared on my Facebook post. About how Chipfumbu was blocked by Plot Marco. So Chipfumbu was blocked by Plot Marco, which is funny because Chipfumbu akashandiswa na Plot Marco, and the evidence is there where he was speaking against Zimura, and then now Chipfumbu na uyu vakunetsana manje avachaonani, saka Chipfumbu akaisa something on social media. I shared the screenshot because akazochibvisa, but zvirikuitika ndezvekuti akachibvisa aisatotora mascreenshot Screenshots Association of Zimbabwe, because vanhu vakava kuti uri kurwisanisa and you are going to derail the project that they are currently doing, which is the project kuita fight against Zimura, I guess, which Vana Derek and Amuli and the trio, the ones vakadzingwa after this issue. So what Chipfumbu reveals is very damning, in the sense yekuti Chipfumbu reveals kuti Amuli didn't get that position by himself. Arikutaura Chipfumbu iye kuti inini ndini ndaka campaignira Amuli. If any people remember, there's a thing that I had done where I explained and I said my candidates my candidates who went into the Zimura election, they raised an alarm about nyaya yekuti Finto ndiye akatora ma videos manifesto videos a Garakara na Amuli. So here Chipfumbu exposes the fact that he is the one who went campaigning and getting Amuli onto the board, because these people had an agenda that they had, right? There's an agenda that they had, and that agenda they had planned and they had talked about this. I encourage you to listen to the audio that I played, which is why I played it. It's quite a long audio, 14 minutes, but then I played it for that reason, right? Because the reason I was playing it was so that you guys can understand the context of what I'm going to discuss. Because it wouldn't make sense if I would just take and start talking about what Chipfumbu is talking about. So Chipfumbu exposes a lot of issues. Chipfumbu exposes kuti Zimu irikunzi irikufanga kupiwa mari yekuzimura, which is the reason why also Zimu has been fighting this fight, and that Edith wants to be given the position of executive director. Like, these are not my words. This is Philip Chipfumbu. That's why I played that audio. Philip Chipfumbu spilling the beans, telling us, kuti chaicho, that is going on. That's what he's doing. He's addressing kuti vakomana vari kufunga kuti vakangwara, because I understand why Plot blocked him. Plot had a problem. Remember, I've told you that Plot is an unethical journalist. Plot is an unethical journalist. I've told you guys that. Because what Plot does is his journalism is not fair. So his journalism depends with the narrative. So when Chipfumbu did his Facebook post, which I shared the screenshot of, I actually knew about it because someone sent me a screenshot. And anditumira screenshot. Ndobva ndati, rega ndinoona kuti Chipfumbu arumboti chi. Saka, when initially Chipfumbu had done his thing, when you tag someone on Facebook, you can see, because the color when you've tagged someone, inengeri blue. Right? When someone blocks you and you mention their name, it no longer becomes blue. So you will see kuti Anonzani Chipfumbu was in his post, screenshot actually iripo kaenda pa profile pangu, you see the screenshot. In his post, he is now blocked by both Plot and Derek. They've blocked him because now he's not with their agenda. And so there's a fighting within the different camps, man. So we all know, we saw the video of the PEMSEC saying the ministry now is going to come in. We don't exactly know what coming in entails. But the ministry said, no, we're going to come in. I'll look for the video. But let me go step by step. Saka, tikuona isu kuti Chipfumbu, katarine group rato creatwa. Anti munkuona not even iya batala group. This thing chakabva kudara. And there's a lot of stuff that's being said. So the other thing that Chipfumbu said is that Derek ayendeswa kuma foreign trips ake nezimura. How far true that is, I do not know. He spoke specifically within the audio and that player. He spoke specifically about a trip to France. Now, I do not know how true this is because, like I said, this is Chipfumbu's words, not mine. Allegedly, Derek Mpofu anga achiendeswa abroad as a Zimura ambassador. What I can confirm is that Derek Mpofu actually was a Zimura ambassador before he ran for elections as for the board. I actually then found out, Derek was a Zimura ambassador. I didn't know that. And I'm like, okay. So, obviously, being a Zimura ambassador, shinema pex azvinazo. This is now gossip, but so Chipfumbu highlights a relationship ya Albert Nyati na Derek Mpofu. Remember, Albert Nyati was the former chair of Zimura before the elections took place, where he said he wouldn't run. So, word on the street is that Albert Nyati is the one who opened the doors for Derek to start having these missions that he was having abroad. Allegedly. This is the word on the street. And Chipfumbu is highlighting the same thing, and he's saying that Chipfumbu arikuti ini ndakavhunza mu board meeting kuti kwaenda vanhu kuFrance uku vaindeswa neZimura ere. But so this you heard it from the audio that was spoken. Saka, Derek was a brand ambassador for Zimura. Derek has been good friends with Albert Nyati. Now, whether their friendship still is strong, I do not know. Which opens a whole can of worms. Okay, so we know from Chipfumbu's talking that Amuli na Garakara ndiye akawa campaignera. Iye na Finto, we know that for a fact. That Amuli and Garakara vakawana mavotes avo via Chipfumbu and via Finto. That's how they got their votes. That's how they got into the board. Because pane agenda yanga itoripo. Chipfumbu thought kuti he was using these people, or he thought kuti these people were in the same line with him. But from his audio and from what's happening now, you can see that Chipfumbu is very vindictive now because he feels used. And we know that Chipfumbu went to Zimu. Remember, pakaitika zvakaitika zviya, plot covered that. We know that Chipfumbu went to Zimu, and Zimu, I guess, said they were going to help you, Chipfumbu. But from what he's saying now, he's saying, Zimu inini, I never asked. So it means Zimu wanted to use Chipfumbu. Pane nyaya yataurwa na Chipfumbu, nyaya yekuLaw Society, ndakaitaura inini, because nyaya yo ndakainzwawo. Yekuti pane edits akatumira something kuLaw Society, trying to get police disbarred and trying to get a lawyer, Angari lawyer with Zimura at that time, who is Jangasha. Because remember, Jangasha was on the previous board as legal. Jangasha was on the previous board as legal. Saka, I knew of this story because ndakainzwa kuti pakatumirwa tsamba na Edith, who is currently the president of Zimu. Edith akatumira tsamba ku Law Society of Zimbabwe achitry kuita get police Lechimini disbarred and getting a witness Jangasha, who was the legal at that time, disbarred. But her efforts were fruitless. Because even Chipfumbu says, Anzi provide evidence. And then here Anzi provide evidence. No parks, no try, no shansa Chipfumbu. And Chipfumbu now says, I've opened a docket for these guys. Because obviously, maybe this information was given in confidence, or that information was never supposed to be used that way. I don't know. And this is docket ravurwa for Zimu Nderechi. This is interesting. So I've always told people, I say to people, guys, you need to understand that Zimura politics is complex. Inini, as I am now even moving in this understanding and looking at these stories, I'm actually realizing that whoosh, pane nyaya dzakawanda. So I think Chipfumbu had a bone to grind with the whole previous board. But ndo paakuzotaura naChipfumbu manje kuti ko Derek aizogona here kuita pursue the agenda neushamwari hwavo naAlbert Nyati. And then he then raises an issue where I do not know if that is true. Allegedly, Albert Nyati campaigned for Derek. My God. So we're looking at a board of 3 people who got in. Some of us, we got into these elections. Tisobuziva politics nezvino zviri kuitika nebackground chi. And listen, it's not only me. Tembelani was in the elections. Willis Watafi was in the elections. Victor Kunonga, Diana Samkange. There were many other people who were there. And so, what I know, and even Alonzani, Mudiwa was actually part of the elections. Akazoti on the day. Oba ataura nyekti board ratogadzirwa kudhara. Ndozva akataura. When he then said, because he had actually said he's going to be to be in the election. Mudiwa only last minute before the election took place says, inini guys, inini ndakubuda pachinichi, because inini zvandurutona ndizoti board ratogadzirwa kudhara nenyaya yemachi yema proxy forms. So I understand when Chipfumbu says ndindaka campaignira Amuli, because Chipfumbu understood the politics of Zimura, understood nyaya proxy. Semuna akaenda pa board twice. Sa Chipfumbu ndiye akafamba nema proxy manje. Achidini achikampaign Amuli, because remember Chipfumbu now he was removed as a member of Zimura after his issues. He was disavowed as a member of Zimura. But now Chipfumbu is now coming out with 2 issues. Kutaura kuti aiwa Zimu haisina kuchena pa kurwa kwavari kuita uko. Because first of all, Edith wants the executive director position. Edith, remember, Edith has been a life president of Zimu. I have actually asked, and if this ever gets to the the head we National Arts Council, if by any chance he sees this, Napoleon Yani, tukukumbirawo constitution, nema articles of association ezimo. Because as far as we know, Edith was an interim president. Edith was an interim president, and there has never been elections at Zimo. And this is the issue that has now divided the camp. Because because now and you have to understand what Wana Derek are pushing for. Wana Derek are pushing for an EGM, an extraordinary general meeting. And they are pushing for an EGM, the dissolution of the board and elections. But it seems some are not pushing for elections. Some are pushing for a board of so-called mature leaders to be inserted. Maybe this is where the government is going to come in. Government in which is a board here, but that is tricky because would that be lawful? But no, this is Zimbabwe. As we know, the government is a creature of law. As we know, the Minister of Justice is a creature of law. So we know that the Minister of Justice has said that it shall intervene. How it shall intervene, we don't really know. And these guys are saying, they said, comments there shall be celebrations in the streets. Atikuziva kuti ma celebrations aya achaitika ndeapi atikuziva kuti kana ivo vari because pakazobuda futi umwe mutauro wakataurwa naDerek kanzi chero ZANU-PF chaiyo needs to know how it is going to benefit from Zimura. Saka atikuziva kuti vana Derek vakaenda here nema promises avo kuZANU about Zimura. Atizivi. This is Derek who said that. This is not me. I'm just saying what I've seen. Zimura open group and now you join up because I thought kuti and kind of group here and because for me I'm more of a voice of reason. Saka as a Zimura member, of course I should be in that group. Because pakatwa EGM, tichaenda EGM ikoko. Tichaenda EGM, pakatwa EGM yacho. Because Tirima member, unless if they then say certain members cannot come here. So there are questions even kuti kazitwa EGM yacho, kuchaitwa my elections here. My elections are turning free and fair, considering the background and everything that is happening. Anyway, I want to play Mono's thing. It was on YouTube, it was waiting here. So here we go. With Mono's
submissions.
This is Mono.
Submissions. Utinazonzoti nyaya yakamira sei. Saka nhasi ndichazama nepandinogona kuti ndisaita kunge ndakanyorerekerawo kana kunge ndakanyorereka. Chekutanga ndenda kure ndoda kukumbira responsible authorities, National Arts Council, the Ministry of Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture, zvakare neMinistry of Justice. Notinozwa kuti Zimura inoita fall under the Ministry of Justice. Nyaya ngatisaitarisire pasi, let's be proactive. Iye yekuti tikaisiya yakadaika nyangwe ikaita kunge ainyarara chironda chinenge changofukidzwa chiti asi chinenge chiripo. Saka chikumbiro changu kuma-responsible authorities andataura ndechekuti ngapaitwe na-emergency general meeting, nyaya iyo yonatsobviwa pamberi pevaridzi venyaya, because Zimura varidzi vayo havasi vashandi vari kuma-offices, varidzi vayo havasi board.
So let's have a look at what Mono is saying. You will notice what Mono has done on his YouTube and in his Facebook. He's disabled comments because he knows that if he enables comments, there are a lot of things that are going to come through. First of all, I have to call out Mono on this. Mono talks as if he is impartial. He's not. He says, ndakanzwa nyaya ndaida kuti nditaure as someone are impartial. He's lying. He's not impartial. Actually, Mono voted for Derek. So he is an aggrieved party in this issue. Mono wasn't there at the AGM, by the way, at the elective AGM. But Panenya Inonziema proxy, right? There are what are called proxy forms where a person can vote in absentia. Saka, the person where Mono put his vote towards Derek. So Mono is not impartial in this issue. Mono is not, as he claims, like neutral. He's not. But he claimed that he's neutral. Why? Because he wants to push a narrative. He's not neutral. And the narrative yake, inoenderana narrative yakapushwa nana Derek, kuti tuda kuti ministry ngaipindire. National Arts Council ngaipindire, but which is a challenge because National Arts Council is the one under which Zimbabwe Musicians Union is under, of which is National Arts Council in this issue as well has got what we would call a conflict of interest, because National Arts Council stands for its group, Zimbabwe Musicians Union. And remember, Zimbabwe Musicians Union does not represent all musicians. A lot of us musicians are not in Zimbabwe Musicians Union. Actually, a lot of Zimura members are not in Zimbabwe Musicians Union. So I've always asked and said, where is Zimbabwe Musicians Union coming in with this issue? Saka, now we get to know from Chipfumbu. Chipfumbu is spilling the beans. Ndakunzwisai audio. Inini chandakanakira ndiyoti I show you evidence, proof. Ndakunzwisai audio. Chipfumbu achitaura kuti nyaya yezimu, nyaya Edith, one, Edith out of executive directorship. Edith ndiye out of that position. Allegedly. This is what Chipfumbu has said. These are not my words. This is Chipfumbu. If any of you have issues, and I am not Chipfumbu, I will try my investigations, and he's saying that so Buddha because those in Ziripo is right. And then Zimu wants to get money from Zimura. So Zimu is having funding problems, obvious. Zimu is having funding problems. So Zimu wants money from Zimura, and their fight in this thing is they want their hands, they want to put their claws in Zimura because they want money, right? Because $5 per Zimura member, which amounts to 20, if not 25,000 a year. So Zimu wants to get 25,000 US a year. And Derek, when confronted with this, I guess, in the group, I wasn't in the group, but ndakaona my chats I share, Derek aka share, I want to read what he said, because I have the stuff there, so I'm going to read it. We're going to work with evidence, because we have to work with evidence. So we want to see, kuti, Alichi Derek. These are Derek's words. I'm just going to read Derek's words. So here's the interesting thing. Plot Marco is nowhere to be seen when it comes to talking about this issue. You would expect that Plot Marco, as he claims to be an investigative journalist, Plot Marco is someone who has used Philip Chipfumbu on his tirade against Zimura. You would expect that he would break this story. So now we are now having to be citizen journalists as musicians, because there's a story, there's a big story here, but no one is breaking it. Anyway, so Derek says this. These are Derek's words. I'm reading them verbatim. My elders, I've been following the discussion and the different views shared. My final thoughts on this. And then he says, moving forward, I believe we have reached a point where we've covered all angles. I don't know the angles. I'm not in the Zimura Open Group. I did want to go, but when I'm Zimura Open Group, Chipfumbu was on their side. And it's probably blessed now to shift our energy kuma preparations at EGM and other pressing issues so that we make progress. My opinion is vese vakataura na Freddy nezvamukoma Philip did so out of genuine concern, knowing their friendship could support a group through misunderstandings. After all, in a group setup hakuna asingataurwe, so let's not take it to heart kuedza kuvakana. About vying for positions, I think it's actually healthy kuti titaura about potential candidates vatinoona vanoita anoda otaura, and also the direction of Zimu, our union, before the EGM. This is Derek saying this, so that we see kuti vanobatsirikana sei pafunding kana kupolitics zviriko. ZANU-PF chaiyo nenyika needs to know how it can benefit from Zimura. Remember the last meeting performed, we even brainstormed nezvanase colors nevamwe muboard kuti chinhu chedu toita sei nacho. This is very healthy because we can't go to EGM and our goal is simply to see Zimura function better. So pane chinhu chiri kutorongwa, because we're saying if we're going to go for an EGM, and the EGM has to be for all Zimura members, who are going to be the candidates in this election? Who has determined who is the candidate? What is the period of campaigning? Because there has to be a campaign period. Tichawana ere vanhu vachipamba manifesto. election ichaitwa nani? Chana Minister of Justice here. Election ichaitwa nani? Kana kuti they are going to be an imposition of leaders because mature leaders. Anyway, let me continue with Mono's address because these things are connected. That's Mono.
Kutsvagwa vanhu vari neutral to moderate the meeting. Imimi vari kumaoffices mukanzi muri kuba zvinowanikwa panobatwa mari pese muchipruvha pamberi pemabosses enyu mamusicians kuti no tandisiri kuba marisisi sedu aya takafambisa basa seizvi basa rika.
So parambotaura nyaya neutrality apa. But my question to Mono, an open question to him is, who is the neutral person here? Because hapana munhu ari neutral. Ndaratidza kuti, for example, National Arts Council is not neutral in this affair. It's not. Because Zimbabwe Musicians Union is under National Arts Council. Also, National Arts Council itself has wanted Zimura to be under its, it has wanted Zimura to register under it when Zimura is under the Ministry of Justice. So, National Arts Council is not neutral. Who is the neutral person who's going to be found? But why is Mono speaking about the National Arts Council? Because Mono knows that the National Arts Council will never favor the cause of Zimura. The National Arts Council will come in and put its hammer and say, it has done that before. National Arts Council, yakapindira panyaya yema-cover band, nyaya yabva yadzoka futi Mono ndobva address. But Mono is not neutral. Neither is, there's a conflict of interest. Because Mono vana vake, right? Mwana wake is involved in this whole cover band saga. And so Mono has got a conflict of interest to speak of this as a neutral party, to speak of it as if he is speaking here as the voice of reason. No. Mono, you are speaking as an aggrieved party because you also voted for Derek. So you're not neutral. Where are we going to get the neutral voices here? It is a good question. Because the truth is there anyone who is neutral in this affair? Is there anyone who is neutral in this
like
affair?
This, like that? Kwetoti munhu akati hatisikuona zvinhu zviri kufamba zvakanaka mutanga kusungisana nekuendesana mapurisa nekuvhundisirana aiwa nekudzingana ngatimbomirei ipapapo vanhu vanobu.
Right. So zviri kuitika ndezvoti pane ma-issues ari kupolice. Now from what we know, even Chipfumbu has opened a docket. I don't know what docket ravurwa na Chipfumbu nderipi. Nyaya iripo ndeyekuti pane zvinhu zvakalikiswa. And the manner in which it was done was unethical. Because remember, we once spoke about it. Plot Marco, I'm an investigative journalist, but Plot Marco is not being investigative at all. Plot Marco is being fed information by Derek, Amuli, and Garakar. Right? So, apparently, now, I'm just putting things together. Because remember, Mono is also friends with Derek. Very good friends. Ndopane nyaya futi yachipfumba apa ari kuti vanhu ngava declare interest avo because vanhu vanoda kutaura about conflict of interest and transparency but vanhu are not being transparent. Kuti chinhu ichi chiri kurongwa behind the scenes. We then see things and then these people come and present a front to you. But vari kuronga zvinhu behind the scenes. Pozotaurwa kunzi hey toda mature leaders toda kuappoint. Saka ndinoda appointwa. What about Mono? I don't know. Because Mono didn't run. Maybe Mono is going to run for the elections. I don't know. I don't think so. Because he even didn't run the last time. Maybe he will run. I don't know. Because it's easy. Zimura politics is complicated. But people might be like, Mono running the elections, you win. He might lose. If he loses, that would be a big thing on his ego and on his record as well. Saka tikuvunza kuti what is the end game? Like I tried to play kuti end game irapa
sekupinda kwavakaita kana vanhu vapinda nemavhoti vanobudiswa nemavhoti into panyaya yebuilding ava vari kuti
well Mono is unfortunately wrong because memorandum of association, itorine a section not about removal of directors. So it's not correct to say if someone was voted in, the only way they can be removed out is through votes. No. Directors can be removed. Even Iwo one Varguita call for EGM. And it will dissolve a board. Not dissolve a board. And calling of the EGM, actually, you want to call for an EGM, trying to get this petition. Zirgitwa through what? And it's through the memorandum of association, the articles of association, the constitution here, Zimura. Saka, no, my brother Mono, I know you see yourself as an elder in the industry, but they are wrong. Because this is about the law, right? Right? If they have done wrong or they are doing things that are harmful to the organization. And these guys were pushing for a hostile takeover. Boardroom coup, which went sour. Because remember that these guys only started making noise when they couldn't get their way. Before that, they were okay with First Farai being the acting chairperson. Remember that First Farai was the acting chairperson when there was a deadlock. A First Farai akataura ku press conference. These are First Farai's words. And I'm glad because I've been going for these things because I want to know. First Farai akataura kati vana muli vayo basa kwangu. When they were canvassing for votes, when they were canvassing for the board, kuti amuli achita canvass kuti ndinduda kuita chairperson amula ayenda vachishamadhananza chimwa doro wese vachiuya kubasa achimigira doro vachidini trying to buy his vote and iye akatovhotera amuli pekutanga from his words. And he said this, he was open about it. He said inini vana vakunditi mbavha vakundisvora, they are now fat shaming me because they are, and it's bad. They're now fat shaming and doing whatever they're doing. But vana they were walking together before things. This is about power, guys. This is about power. This is about power. Saka pane nyaya. Legatiendele mberi ne nyaya.
Building yanotengeswa zvakanaka vo ita submission yavo. Imimo muri kuti no. Building yakatengeswa zviri mugwaro muita submission yenyu. Satiri papapo zvakare. I think kumsoro kuna director na vice wake nekuma board member.
Here's the problem with my brother Mono. My brother Mono didn't attend the AGM. This is the problem with a lot of musicians. A lot of musicians don't attend these AGMs. But they want Kutizinu, because Mono could have stood up at the AGM. The former chairperson, Albert Nyati, spoke about Nyaye building. Kwi AGM, there was an opportunity for people to say, building rakatengeswa iri chimbotu udzai tuzviminyanyo famba sei. Vana Mono didn't come for the AGM. Right? And I guess now Mono is pushing for the EGM. He wants the EGM. We even asked to EGM ikoko ndivana nevachauya because we have a challenge where people don't even attend AGMs. Are people going to attend this EGM? Are people going to attend this EGM, or the people who are coming for this EGM one at Derek? Because how many people are going to come? Right? How many people are going to become a quorum? Then to tell about the elections, who's running in these elections? How do we know that these elections will be fair and fair? Because already, patori problem itoripo, ne factionalism itoripo, and kana kurukuti ana Derek are running this election. There's no way this election will be free and fair. Because ana Derek vanenge vachirana this election, iyo vachida kupinda. Election ikatorano, kana kukaitwa EGM kukaita election. Right? We are neutral. You can't, because Nasi Munerme group, this lady says, election Gairan in the National Arts Council. But I got in the National Arts Council, who are the owners of Zimbabwe Musicians Union. Zimbabwe Musicians Union, which is proving it's an issue of money. They want money, they want funding. They want Zimura to fund them. Why should Zimura fund Zimu? Why should Zimura fund Zimbabwe Musicians Union? Zimbabwe Musicians Union, they should have their own funding through their membership, through National Arts Council. Do they not get funding from National Arts Council? Vanhu veZimbabwe Musicians Union havane funding for National Arts Council. Saka vanhu veZimbabwe Musicians Union vari kuda kupinda munyaya iyi yekuzimura because vari kuda mari. Because vada 20,000 or 25,000 every year. They want 20,000 or 25,000 every year from Zimura, Zimbabwe Musicians Union. What gives you the right to take musicians' money and then claim that you are fighting for musicians? You see, these people are liars. These people are deceivers. They came to us and they appear. I knew it from the start. Now there are no group. But my group I got because because nyayekufamba negunda musaira yakashatira pakuti hauzivi ma-desires nema-agendas evanhu vari kufambisa zvinhu izvi. Saka Zimu agenda yavo ndeyekuti Zimura ivafandi yearly 25,000, 20,000 I guess, $5 per member, because membership yeZimura is about to get to 5,000. Handizivi kuti vanenge vachishandisa which clause, vanenge vachiti asi Derek atotaura kuti izvi zvinhu zvanga vataurirana vakati union yedu tiri kufanira kufanda union yedu. Vanhu vari kunyepa kuti hanzi tiri kurwira kuti vanhu vari kuwana maroyalties mashoma. Muda kutora 20,000, 25,000 iyoyo from maroyalties ema-musicians. Hamunyari vanhu veZimu. Muri kuclaima kuti ma-musicians hasi kuwana enough royalties, but you are busy planning and scheming so that you can take the cake, you can take Maria Zimura, and you are busy planning and scheming. As Chipfumbu says, these are not my words. This is Chipfumbu, which is why I played that audio. Chipfumbu said, kuti iwo edit ndoda executive directorship. And iwo edit utori nema problems, nema issues, because you've been a life president. Zimbabwe Musicians Union, there's been no democracy. Zimu has existed with an interim president who has become life president. Why is Zimbabwe Musicians Union not having elections? But they are busy calling for accountability and transparency. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I'm saying who is calling for accountability and transparency to Zimbabwe Musicians Union? I actually asked, and I will have this on record because I asked it. Takambonetsa nyaya dzema cover band. Ndakati kuna chairperson vedu, Albert Nyati. In a musicians group that we're in. I said, Mr. Chair, can you please go and talk to Napoleon Nyani and ask him to give us the constitution yeZimu. Tudamboidzverawo timboona kuti Zimu inofanirwa ichirana sei. Zvakare iyo Zimu inomboauditwa here, ma-finances avo ari kufamba sei. We know kuti pane vanhu vatori very aggrieved because they are saying that Edith went to UK on a Zimu scholarship that was meant to benefit members. Yes, a president Nuba atora advantage of my emails, atora advantage of communication was coming to her, and she went to the UK on that scholarship when that scholarship was supposed to benefit members. So Edith went to the UK through manipulating the systems of Zimbabwe Musicians Union. The same Edith who is coming to you, coming to the public and claiming that Tukuruira Vayimbi. When Chipfumbu then comes in and says, no, you're lying, Edith. Auskuruira Vayimbi wewe, urukuruira position ya executive director, urukuruira funding ye Zimu. Kuti Zimu iwane funding from Zimura. Because Zimura is the one thing within the music industry that is actually sort of like functioning. This is the one thing that is sort of like functioning. Saka, panenya.
Takuda ma-10 minutes. Kuti munhu anoramba aripo for decades and decades and decades. Munhu anopedzisira yambambaira yekuti yatambarara zvokuti kuibvise papapo inenge yaonesa kubvisa ende akavhiringa zvinhu anenge ane nzira dzekuzvimiririra. At least ma-terms mairi maximum. Then chechipiri, nerequest.
Okay, so Mono says we need term limits for management. It depends. It seems like it's something that makes sense, but remember, when you get management for its skills. Management is gotten for its skills. So you're going to be changing management after how many years? Is that because we're getting skills? I don't really understand that, but I get where he's trying to come from to say, no, tikasaisa ma-term limits, vanhu vanogara kwenguva yakareba, and then zvinozonetsa kuvabvisa from that position. Not really, because if you get a board that the board can agree kuti takubvisa munhu, ndobasa reboard. But chinoonesa ndechoti vanhu vanofunga kuti vanhu when they're outside, even isusu were outside, when you get inside the system, because remember there is a previous board rangarana Janet Manyoa, even here Chipfumbu Arkunana spill the beans was part of the board. He was voted in twice. He was part of the board. So when people get into the board, so board rakudara rangarana Albenyati, Chipfumbu was part of that board. After Zingwa, Janet Manyoa, Jangasha was the legal, Goodchild was in that board. Then we have Mudiwa who was part of that board. Ananzani, Hope Masike was part of the Zimura board. Akabiswa, because Hope Masike had a conflict of interest. Hope Masike was sitting on two boards, which is the National Arts Council board and the Zimura board. Akatobviswa. Saka, ndosaka nchiti, vanhu who don't know the history of the politics, the history of Zimura, who say, muna agoni ngobviswa. Hope Masike akabviswa. Anatomboita noise. Akabviswa because of a conflict of interest. Hope Masike akabviswa. From that board, akabangoenda. There's a lot of issues to dissect.
Gapa nyanyo in the musicians. In the country, musicians very active. Kwete one wakakwita music ikaundu one was very active music industry. No, one was chiri more music industry.
So the Zimura board is made up of Zimura members. He's saying per board ngapa in the musicians. Remember, Zimura is for composers, not just musicians. Munano gonna ari lyric writer. But munano nyara ma lyrics. Pama split sheet. Munano nyara ma lyrics can be a member of Zimura. Pama split sheet because Antro deserve royalties aki. So I think my brother Mono is missing the point because he's looking at elitism. You would know Zimura should only have what we term musicians. And Ian Daku Titi, my musicians are active. I don't know what he's saying. Because everyone who's in the board, except legal, and there has to be a legal within the board, is a musician. Oh, that board, that previous board, even this board, it's musicians. Zimura members who are musicians, whether Kutimunu are popular in his eyes, in Mono's eyes, or in other people's eyes. And you have to understand that Zimura also is a company. Though yes, it is doing Shema royalties for musicians, Zimura is a company. So the wisdom is to have people in the board who actually understand royalties. Even a musician, I would write in a musician who is now in my prime, maybe the musician who's not as active, but it could be helpful to have someone like that. So it's tricky. I get his point. But even Aida could be on board. Mono. The last AGM we had was an elective AGM. Abanajem had some Mono could I say his candidacy. The other thing is that people are voted for all you need is to get you get a member of Zimura to say I'm nominating Ningi kuti arane election. So hapana chinombotadzisa musicians aya kuti vaite a part of the board. Nyaya inonetsa ndeyekuti Zimura politics is complicated. And I explained that last time. Tembelami is a very famous musician, but he didn't make it into the board. Despite him being more famous than Chipfumbu, I mean, inini Chipfumbu, I really didn't know Chipfumbu until he started doing his issues, Zimura. Even when he was in the board, I knew that he was in the board, but like he was one of that person who was until Zivi for him as a musician. So that point that he's making, it's like, remember the board is elected democratically. So ndo panobuda imwe nyaya yekuti tikubvunza kuti pane zvikuronga kuti iye zvino board ro appointwa. Or maybe muda appoint a board. Muentaura imuntu not appoint Ningi because, but it doesn't mean that somebody, because just they're a big musician, they understand about royalties. They might not even understand Jack. It doesn't mean they understand corporate governance. So there are issues there. So yeah.
Industry. Chichitatu ndoda kuti izvo pane vari kuti hanzi aiwa ndapa vambwe organizations pasangova neorganization imwe chete. That's not a good idea as well. Most tikatasa nyika yakaita seSouth Africa nekukura kwese kuSouth Africa waya pane collecting society imwe chete.
Zimbabwe already has 2 collecting societies. So what are you saying, Mono? Zimbabwe already has 2 collecting societies. Everyone knows Zimura because Zimura is the biggest one and is the one that's actually working very well. Zimbabwe already has 2 collecting societies. And that collecting society, H2, yakaiswa because government allowed it. Government gave them, they operationalized them, they gave them their license. Saka, my problems is Zimura are not going to be solved by people who are trying to destroy Zimura. I think that people were saying to Anna Derek, I don't think they are wrong in a sense. I actually think it's like chimboita imimi tione bozi muri kutaura chimboita muise ma-artists mustable yenyu mutange kucollectira ma-artists wow. People who might be saying they are complaining not to destroy an organization that has already existed. So there's an issue, there are issues, there's a lot of stuff here. All right, let's keep on.
So instead yekuti uku kwaitika chaos twadasiya tonotanga imwe koko kwaitika chaos futi topesa ta
chaos yatotanga ka hadi muona chaos yatotanga vana Derek nana Chipfumbu vachawirirana aitozvidza kuti chaos inototanga because musicians panonetsa saka isusu tobva tabvunza nyaya yekuti already there's chaos. Why is no one talking about the case that's already there? Because there are 2 collecting societies. There are already 2 collecting societies. And the current board has actually articulated with some of the problems that Zimura is facing is because of this other collecting society, which is undercutting Zimura, which is going to collect for rights that it does not hold because it is collecting for in places where Zimura musicians are played. Yeah, there's an issue. By the way, Mono joined Zimura in 2000. I got to understand that Zimura yakatanga 1982. So Mono joined Zimura 18 years after its formation. Because Mono I don't think in terms of understanding issues to do with copyright, understanding Zimura itself. Yes, Mono idara. Atila Mono is a good guitarist. But being a good guitarist doesn't make you knowledgeable on issues of copyrights, on issues of law. So, I mean, listen, he's an elder. But elder vedu vakaraska singaita apa. Even kunyema uyu vakaraska futi, but because at the time, nyema cover bands, payakaitika, nyai yakaita musindo steric, and people were just like, Zimura, but pane, and remember, he was a conflicted part, because mwana wake is a part of a cover band, right? Also, iye Mono pachake, he likes kuita zvema cover. So he's not a neutral party. The mistake I even told people, I said the mistake you made when you did that thing, was to have Mono as the moderator, but Mono was not neutral. Mono appeared to be neutral, but he wasn't. He had an agenda that he had. And this is where Chipfumbu is coming in. I'm telling you, over the next few days, pacha really was Zvinzvakawanda, because Zvinzvakawanda zvirikubuda pachena Zvinzvakawanda zvakutaura kuti ma-actors who are in this, ndakazotaura ndikati endgame zvichanakidza, because there's an endgame, there's things that are going on that are going to come out into the open kuti chii chaicho chiri kumboitika. Because listen, there are people who have been members of Zimura longer than Mono. There are people who have been members of Zimura since its inception, kuma 82s, who know how Zimura functions better than Mono. Their musicians were just silent. There are musicians who have been in the board. I remember when we did Zimura podcast, we had a thing in what's his name? Who used to be in the board? Na Mechanic Manyeruka. Mechanic Manyeruka at one point used to be in the board. Kudaro. what's his name? Vana Charamba, vatombopinda board. So there are people who know about the Zimura and its way it was functioning. Vakawanda sterek. There are people who are just silent. But I want to see, but there are people who, some of us might not know, who have been members of Zimura and have been getting royalties from Zimura for a very long time. Even mukadzi one, akatombopinda board foot. After murume wake afa. I need to get the name, who's it? My temple. I think my temple akatombopinda board. Saka, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to address. Right. So much stuff to address. So much.
Organization 5 and makeos apa kanyika kadiki kaita seZimbabwe na 15 million people. One iyoyo isiri kumira muchienda yegadziriswa. Then ndikuona kuti nyema cover.
So this is the problem. Mono misdirects people because he speaks as if Zimbabwe only has one collecting society, which is wrong. Zimbabwe currently has 2 collecting societies. Zimura is only the most famous one. I will not mention the other society because it's not worth mentioning in terms of its name. People don't know it for a reason. But here, you should be actually honest. Right now, there's confusion because there are 2 collecting societies. There are 2 collecting societies that are competing and causing confusion. And even here, the other collecting societies being accused of funding these problems. Are we Zimura? So, yeah. Panenyaya. Saka Mr. Mono say, Semuna no dilemma facts, you should have dealt with that. But I should let you know, there are currently 2 collecting societies. And the other collecting society has been there for some time. And it was confusion. Confusion, it's already being caused. And then you said, confusion. And they can't even agree themselves because now people are vying for positions, for power. But okay, EGM, so election chafamba say. And the Zakara EGM should be open to everyone. Anyone who wants to become on the board has a democratic right. So what is the basis? Yevano wanakuita call for EGM. What is the basis? Yavachaita ikuti ndiana achapinda election. What is the basis? Because there are people who also want to be there. Even Apatanzwa mazita kandwa hapa. And that was Derek Mpofu's word. He was like, when I say colors, I don't know what to say colors. Vaudopinda board manje. Vakaregre kupinda. There was an elective AGM. If he wanted, you say colors wanted to be in the board. Why didn't he run when we ran? So then the questions will come, if this election then happens, are we going to be allowed to run again? People like me, Tembelami, Vanatayana Samkange, Vana, whatever. What is going to happen? Because an election has to be free and an election has to be fair. And the election achicha run one nan. Pus guti muti election guy on the National Arts Council. National Arts Council is got a conflict of interest in this whole issue. They are not a neutral party. Maybe election actually run on a Minister of Justice. I don't know how. It's no interest say muma articles of association munotichi by the Zimura Constitution can the Minister of Justice run an election. Kutikuta in EGM zakari there needs to be a consent for that to happen. My members have to agree to say to the EGM. Are the members saying that? Or Derek have been pushing for that? Because yes, there's an online petition, but petition here my members is Zimura, who is cross-checking, because those guys are not part of the team Zimura. Do they even know who is a member and who's not? Are they checking? Petition Zimura number could to cross-check ID number. You two not munu. Remember, Zimura Chokwadiri. Katana Rungo sign a petition. Because Panama musicians were not members of Zimura. Yeah. I'm gonna have to do a part 2 of this because there's so much to address. Anyway, he came back to
Dzoka futi. I know depends panoitaura pane vanoti vanozita arodaro bhozi ari kuprotecta vana vake vein total. No. inini I'm considered a father figure ne vanhu vari muarts industry vazhinji nokuti most of them mazere vanhu vangu. Saka pese panoitika crisis, believe it or not, even if you ask my wife anokudza kuti foni yangu inogara ichirira even pakatanga nyaya idzi.
Mono is a very clever, but he's not that clever. So that's why he's turned off the comments. Both on Facebook and on YouTube, he's turned off the comments. Nyaya makava bands yadzoka because vanhu vakachema nenyaya makava bands havana kumbobvira vanyarara. Zvakaitika ndezvoti National Arts Council yakangosvika ikangoti mba ikati aiwa isusu zvemakava bands tazviramba izvi. Ndobva Ministry of Justice yazouyawo ikati mba. But the people who are being affected by their copyright, which is being abused, have never been silent. So he talks about it because he knows kuti that issue ikuramba ichidzoka because people are asking kuti koimimi makati nyaya muchaisolva. Because remember when the issue was done, makati vachadzoka, we need to review this tariff, we need to chichichichichichi. But people had then said, panofanirwa kuve some form of tariff because you can't just use the property of someone else without paying for it. So yes, and then he tries and explains, he tries and cheat. But anyway, that's another issue. I think I will cover that in another video. But I will look at that commentary. But we'll come back to the Zimura internal governance, the corporate governance issues, and the board issues. Which first of all, Mono is not neutral. Mono voted for Derek. He voted for Derek using a proxy. He wasn't at the AGM, but he used a proxy form. It is on record that Mono Mkundu voted for Derek. So Mono in this issue is an aggrieved party. Mono and Derek are very good friends. And from allegedly, other people actually say, there is Mono's hand at play as well in what is happening. But he's playing it from the background, from the shadows. Because Iechi had kuti sezo iye manje achinze father figure of Zimbabwean music. That's what he says. That's what he claims. I dispute that. He says, as a father figure of Zimbabwean music, Inini, I think he's made himself that because he is not. He says Inini, so he's trying to appear like he's neutral, but it's not gonna work because people know. People know. Panyama cover band zvakashanda because it was a different issue, but now this issue is about Zimura politics, and people know Mono. People know where he stands. People know who he voted for. Like I'm telling you, Guti, Mono via proxy voted for Derek. Saka Mono is not a neutral party in this issue. Mono might be actually he is an aggrieved party. And he's trying to come out and trying to, but he's not neutral. And then he calls, he says, no, Hunzai National Arts Council, National Arts Council, which is not a neutral party in this. Because Isuzu Tukunzwa from Chipfumbu, the Zimbabwe Musicians Union wants money from Zimura. But Zimbabwe Musicians Union has no right to Zimura money because that money is for composers. It's royalty yevanu. Kuti Zimu itaure kuti stauda funding from Zimura. That's greed. And for them to deceive people and lie to people and say, we were fighting for musicians, when they were not fighting for musicians, when they were fighting for their own agendas. Ndakauza mama musicians, yati chenjerai zvekundamsaira, chenjerai zvekungofamba with the crowd, because you don't know who's leading the crowd and what agendas they have. So there's a lot to unpack. But this live is there, guys. Please share this live. Share this live. And it's on YouTube. I'm also going to put it on Twitter. So you can watch it on other platforms. All right? We have a lot to talk about. The Endgame. The Endgame. Yes, Zimura. Endgame. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, guys. All right. I need to go now. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please share. Those who are going to see this on YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube, comment, like, share. On Facebook, you can also follow me on Facebook, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Twitter. I'm not going to put this one on TikTok. TikTok doesn't do well with long videos. So you'll notice TikTok, and my music is doing very well with TikTok, by the way. But TikTok with long videos. I remember I've done lives with TikTok before. Long videos, that's not the thing for TikTok. So YouTube, Facebook also works, Twitter works. People can watch like long form videos. All right, so it's cool. Thank you guys.